Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second panel in our Conversations program today, co-presented by our collaborators at Qatar Creates Talks. My name is Khalid Milliard, I'm Art Basel's executive editor, and I'm thrilled to introduce Becoming as a State of Mind, a panel which really impacts and unpacks for you all the concept behind our very first edition of Art Basel Qatar here in Doha. On stage, we're delighted to have Wael Shawky, our artistic director, the artist Rachel Whiteread. A big round of applause. This panel is moderated by Vincenzo de Bellis, our Chief Artistic Officer and Global Director of Art Basel Fairs. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. And it's great to see all of you. I don't know whether there's any other spots, but if not, I'm sorry for those of you who have to stand. I'm honored to be next to such an important protagonist of our the art of today. As some of you might know, this panel was supposed also to feature Ella Natsui, who unfortunately, due to some personal reasons, couldn't make it today. We apologize for those of you who wanted to hear from him, and we send all of you his best regards. But still, we are with two great panelists, and what we want to talk today about is really what the concept of the show, the first edition of Art Basel Qatar is, and which is Becoming. It's a concept that Wael Shawky came up with after having a long dialogue with, actually not very long, a dialogue with with me and with the rest of their Basel team. After he was informed that, after inviting him to be the artistic director of the fair, that he could work with solo presentations and how to better steer the selection of both the art, the artists, the galleries. We wanted to have something special and something that would be artistically driven by one of the most important voices of art today, Wael. And so he, after some thinking, came up with this concept, which we're going to hear more about. And of course, Rachel is one of the protagonists of the fair. She's responded to this invitation through his gallery, and really we are honored to have you both here. The talk today is going to be, I would say, I will ask a few questions that will be for both of you, the same, and you will respond. And then I have a few specific questions for each of you. Of course, before we start, and before I start asking questions, I'd like to say a few words about these two fantastic artists. For those of you, very little of you, who might not know who Rachel Whiteread is, she is a fantastic, legendary British sculptor who has won the Turner Prize in 1993, represented Britain at the Venice Biennale in 1997, and who's been working and showing in the most important museum around the world, MoMA, Kunstmuseum in Basel. I like to say that since I'm a resident of Basel, and many, many others. And Wael Shawky, who not only is the artistic director of Art Basel Qatar and the artistic director of Fire Station here in Doha, but also has represented Egypt in the last edition of the Venice Biennale, has won the Silver Lion at the Venice Biennale a few years back. Oh, no? Maybe, see? I take that back. Next year. Maybe the Golden Lion. And has been showing in, again, some of the most important museums around the world, including, again, just because I'm Italian and I want to mention that, Castello di Rivoli, and Caroline is here, and they go way back, and many others, including Luma, very recently, a few months ago. So, without further ado, I'd like to start with you, Wael, and tell us a little more about why becoming, what this means specifically in this part of the world, what this means for you as an artist, but also not only as a practitioner that practices art every day, but also as an educator and as a liminal figure for this part of the world in bringing something like Art Basel here.
Thank you so much, Vincenzo. Thank you so much for attending this talk. Why is becoming? It's actually one of my concerns as artist. I'm always fascinated by the idea of focusing on civilizations and on societies in transition. Societies that have dreams to develop from one system to another system. Usually my work is about this. I lived part of my childhood in Mecca, and I am from Alexandria, Egypt. And for many, maybe for some people think that this is just similar, but it's not similar at all, completely different. And for me as Egyptian, somehow in my subconscious, it's as if I'm coming from an agricultural society, let's call it this way. Which is not true. Alexandria is not an agricultural society, but it's just the culture is like this, which is not the case in Saudi at all. So just moving between these two different systems, let's call them systems, I think that shaped a lot of the way I make art today. A lot of the things that I've seen and I witnessed as a child in the end of 70s in Saudi is what I experience today in my artwork, which is experiencing several systems together that you cannot compare between them. It's not that they are against each other, but they cannot really compare between them, including, for example, the system of being tribal, being Bedouin, and at the same time, that was the beginning of modernity, that it's more like American modernity in Saudi Arabia. So witnessing all of this is the idea, actually, that also I was trying to achieve here at this concept, which is becoming. Of course, that was a lot of conversation between me and Vincenzo. It was not me alone. So this is reality in everything. So, but it was really connected to my practice as an artist also. So yeah, this is the beginning of the question.
Thank you, Wael. When we talked about becoming, that concept shifts our perspective from permanence and authorship to impermanence, and also letting these things go. Rachel, how do you respond to that? How do you respond to this within your work?
Within my work. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all again for coming. It's something that I've always been interested in and approached in sort of many different ways, but generally through a casting process. And, you know, what I'm interested in is really the sort of touch of the human being. And whatever they have left behind, I will try and evoke or emboss on the surface of the object that I'm making. And that's been, I think, since 1989. And there are slides right at the beginning of this, or images, should I say, right at the beginning of this, that show me in 1989 making a piece called Ghost, which is the piece that I was most, it sort of started my career. And as a sort of baby artist at that time, I literally, you had no money, you had sort of nothing, but was really wanted to make what I was calling, I wanted to be able to mummify the air in the room. That's what that's how I was thinking about sort of domesticity, about home, about the things that we have around us. And, that was really early on. And then I produced a few more sort of smaller pieces, and then I was asked by an organisation called Art Angel in London if there was anything else that I wanted to do. And I said, yes, I'd love to make a house. And they said, what, an entire house? I said, yeah. He said, great, we'll do it. So that was the beginning of all of this work. Since then, varying degrees, I've invented things, I've had to make buildings which are partially, with some of the things connected, but then I've remolded them, done other sort of versions of things. But essentially, that's what I try and do, is to extract the essence of what was originally there.
Thank you. And then I'd like to hear now from you, becoming also, it speaks about a transient state, something that it's fluid, and therefore maybe a word that we can use also for that would be impermanence.
Yeah.
But you are fundamentally a sculptor, which makes of the permanence and the presence of the object the thing. How do you respond to concepts that have to deal with impermanence or shifting pace or shifting landscapes?
Yeah, well, I mean, sorry to use this as a term here, but, a sand dune is never the same the next day. I think that's one of the things that I sort of try and think about, is that how we, a lot of my work is quite ephemeral, even though there will be an object in front of you, but it's also quite sort of meditative, and and I think I find these things very important. There's something about the kind of spiritual world in a way that I'm very interested in, though not being kind of religious, but it's something that I find. Yeah, I think that also that sort of impermanence is actually really a state of life. Nothing is permanent, and we can make things that will be found again in many, many years' time, or we can make things that disappear in a puff of smoke. I think it's I first came to Doha, I think it was about 12 years ago, and then I came again last year. It was a completely different place. I recognized nothing, it was just a very, very different thing. And, that's the interesting thing about a place, like Qatar, where, it's the oil has been the thing that has produced, a lot of wealth here. And, with the sort of culturally, what's happened in the way people lived here before, to then sort of make buildings and actually really inhabit things, for me, is a very interesting thing.
Thank you. And I'd like to hear from you instead. How would you describe your response to as an artist now? Forget about the work as the artistic director of Art Basel, but literally, when we talk about impermanence, and there's few things more that we can say later, how would you respond to that concept with your specific work?
How can I respond to the concept? Because, back to the idea of becoming, again, actually so this fascination about societies in transition, to me, the Gulf and Qatar specifically now can be a metaphor of this dream of development that society has, that each one of us has this dream of being higher and higher. And I think this is really what I'm always into in my work. So if I try to give examples from my work, let's just go back to, for example, Cabaret Crusades. And we give an example of the speech by Pope Urban II in 1094 in Clermont to launch the first Crusades. This speech, which was not actually documented during the speech itself, but it was documented after. That's why we have several editions, several versions of this speech, which is also tells you the way we can translate history and how can we believe in history and what is the authenticity of this written history. But on another side, the idea of this speech, the key of this speech, that is giving the hope to people, to European, that if they go to the East, they will find bigger land and they will have better choices and if they die, they will go to heaven and he will ensure their seat in heaven. So, I'm talking about this also. This is also an example of this idea of the dream. I mean, the dream of being higher, better in everything. And I did this in many of my productions, that it's all about this concept of becoming. Yeah.
I want to stay on the region because we're having this conversation and this fair and your presence, all of you, in the Gulf, which is a region that is going under as layer of history, and what we could define as what we define civilization was founded and started not far from here. At the same time, is going under pressure, and at the same time, well, pressure to say the least, and accelerated transformation. Something that we see, for example, in this specific context, where we have still the Mesherab Museum really still maintaining the original architecture, and the rest of the Mesherab is a self-sustained green neighborhood. So how do you value in both cases? I'll start with you, Wael, the concept of speed, change, and development, circulation of the meanings for your work and in general for things that we see distributed culturally around the world.
Okay, but that's why I'm also doing all of this here. Now, for example, I am making this new film production here in Doha. And I've been in this conversation for a really long time, maybe 7 years now. How can I make a film that is translating all these ideas about the development of this region? And when I say this region, actually mainly I'm talking about the Gulf now. So I'm talking about the history of the Gulf. And since I'm fascinated by this type of development and the dreams of being higher, for me, I started with the idea to make a film that it will go back 400 years ago with something called Al-Utub migration, Hijrat Al-Utub. And I thought this really can be the amazing beginning because many tribes immigrated from the heart of Saudi Arabia to go toward the east. And in that case, and of course, some of them went up to Iraq and then went down again. And I was really fascinated about just how to follow these routes and the relationship between these tribes and what is happening today in the Gulf. But then I found that still this is very superficial, and I started to work with, because most of this history, it's not me that I'm writing this, of course. I'm working with historians and I work with academics, always like this. Even here with this art fair, without Vincenzo, I wouldn't be able to make this research because he's next to me. And yes, I need people who knows the history of everything. This is exactly what I'm doing in the art film. And so we went back. We decided to go back more and more and more until it became, now we start from 2360 BC with someone called Surjon al-Akkadi. And this is when we see this whole area, the Gulf, is part of the Sumerian Empire. So, and we need to go from the Akkadian to the Ashurian to Babylonian, and also we have to go through all the religions, and starting from Abraham, even that it's supposed to be almost 2000 BC. So I mean, for me, it's just like every type of artwork I'm doing, it's a way to learn and it's a way to discover everything around me. Because Yeah, instead of trying to give another complete example, like the last film I made called I'm Hymns of the New Temples, which is I filmed in Pompeii in Italy. I didn't know anything about the Greek mythology before this film. And just because I was fascinated by Pompeii itself, I started to read, and of course I also work with historians, and in the end I translated this written history into a new readable format, which is really what I always try to say in every place, that I prefer to call myself a translator that is capable of translating. And this process of translating for me is the creativity, is the creative process actually that I always prefer, not to believe that I am the one who's creating ideas.
Thank you, beautifully said, thank you. Rachel, I'd like to ask similarly to you, because of course, you know, and the reason why I'm asking you, because your practices are different, and your provenance is different. And so while Wael can respond to this geography as being rooted within this culture, I'd like to ask how you see this from your work and from your perspective, how you respond to this fast-growing and at the same time very deep rooted history that this part of the world has.
You know, for me, it's absolutely kind of fascinating, the history of this part of the world, but I don't know so much about it. You know, I'm European. I have, I've made a number of works responding to cities and places. But the thing, I think there's a very good point that Wael just made, that I also like to see myself as a translator. I think that's a really great way of putting it. I think that, cities usually develop organically. They're really, you'd start from one place and things would sort of grow outwards or it grow inwards, depending on. So a series of villages that then become a city, and I think that's, somewhere like New York, Manhattan, which has this sort of street plan, which is up and down, straight across, straight across, straight across. It's very specific to the place and the plot of land that it's on. Whereas this region, everything is constantly shifting, has always shifted. So I can't really answer that question because I really don't know enough about the history. But I will say that one of the things that I have done in the past, which I have found a way of sort of trying to get away from the sort of hysteria of making, is a project that I call Shy Sculptures. Which I've built a number of them now, 2 in America, 3 in America, 1 in the UK, 1 in Norway, 1 in, and they're all places that you have to make a journey to get to. The journey is as important as the piece. So, for me, that's another way of looking at it, is that you kind of, it's not a question of always sort of coming inwards. The sort of explosiveness of going outwards as well is another way of looking at it. But as Wael said, translator, I think it's a brilliant way of describing, I think, what so many artists are. It's what we do. We breathe the world, we absorb the world, and then I'll often stare at a blank wall for days on end, and then I will begin to understand what it is I'm trying to get from the place, from the smell, from how people look, how people dress, the food, everything that we see around us. And it's a great privilege, actually, I would say, to come here and work here, and a place that is trying to do so much, and I hope continues to do so much, that will be, the last time I was here, I did a big tour, saw lots of great things, and I was genuinely very impressed with what's been happening here.
Thank you. I'd like to pick up on a few words that you both used, but I'll start with you, Rachel, because you said that for some of your projects, the journey to get there is as important as, at the same time, we talked about acceleration, which is the opposite of that concept. Yeah. And yet, we've been communicating throughout this week, now 2.5 days, that we want to slow things down, that this fair is about solo projects, because we want to slow the pace, we want to focus. So probably the answer to my question will be obvious, but do we necessarily have all to accept to go fast? Do we necessarily have to accept that we have to be bombarded by images and inputs, or can we resist, and can you as artists resist to that, and then go back to a slower pace? That's what we are aiming to do here.
Personally, that's what I'm trying to do too. And I think, you know, the world is going at such a speed, and everything is at such a speed that it's, you know, we're bombarded every second of the day with something or other. And, you know, the quietness of what we all need, everybody needs it, is being taken away from us, or we're developing it so it will happen even quicker, whatever, whichever way you want to look at it. You know, I think there's a great need. You know, one of the things that I say to kids when I'll often give lectures to, I try to do it to kids before they go to university, or when they're at university, but often before they go to university. And I always say to them, learn how to be bored. Being bored is the crux of, I think, where a lot of things get worked out and a lot of things slow down, and you begin to understand the world in a different way.
Thank you. Wael, I have to ask you the same question. And also because when we were coming together, we were together in the car, and Wael said to me, how do you guys do it? How do you do 5 fairs in a year? It's too much. And yet is our job, but it's not necessarily yours. So how do you respond to the same idea of slowing, which is very important to this show specifically?
Maybe, okay. It's a bit, okay. I'm not sure it's about slowing. It's about, I have sort of a belief in this idea of, because this is also coming from education. I think everything in the end, I'm really connected to education somehow. I like a lot to practice my artwork, but sometimes I need to be a little bit away from myself, a little bit away from my ego, everything. This is, I think, very healthy, extremely healthy, to be away from this and to focus a bit on the education, other things. And I like a lot, even in my artwork, to work on subjects, topics, languages that I don't know at all. I worked a lot in things that really I have no, really knowledge about it, including, for example, a piece called Dictums, which is I made with Qawwali musicians from Pakistan in Urdu. I don't speak Urdu, and I don't know anything about Qawwali music. And in the end, this is, again, a form of translation. But this is all really for me, because of a belief that it's coming from, also from educational point of view. I have always a problem when art has a certain look. Once the artists know what art should look like, it's not art anymore. This is really a problem for me. How can I try to always to be in this space where I don't know what I'm doing, what art should look like? I have to be running after something that I don't know what is it. This is the only way to be creative. And that's why I really, really enjoyed being in this art fair. I think it was an amazing experience for me. And it was for me like making an art piece also, because it's something I really don't know what is it. It's just like making, like really being in this process, like working with history, making music, scenography, choreography, like every film I'm making. And that's how it's possible to do everything. Education, art films, art fair, being a curator sometimes, whatever. It's just something I think sometimes that artists should not be good in anything. Seriously.
A
I
lot of
mean,
them
because
aren't.
once they're good, they're not artists anymore.
Then I would be the best artist in the world.
Reality.
Wael, I'll start this time from you. Your work is a balance always between your personal ideas, your personal stories, but also a lot about, stories that are group stories that are from a large group of people, stories that belong to your past. And then when I say your past, also not your biographical past, but what we've been living. So how do you manage, what is your relationship as also you use the word translator, right? And for me, translator in this case is also, you're basically shifting from what you hear from the history, from what you read, into something that filters your body as an artist and then gets redistributed through your lens. What's the approach there? What sense of responsibility, if you have a sense of responsibilities in narrating those stories, and what is the sense between real and fiction?
Oh, very interesting. Yes, real and fiction. This is, of course, one of the big things that I'm always fascinated also by doing, which is try to understand our relationship between metaphysical world and physical world. What is this? And I did this before in one of my series called Al-Arab Al-Madfuna. It's just, I can just give you this very quick example about Al-Arab Al-Madfuna. I had the opportunity to go to a village in Egypt with someone who believes that he can see what's happening underground, and he can heal people and find treasures and all of this. And in this experience, it was really tense experience for me, because I found that there is a huge community that is believing in all of this, and it's really happening in front of me. So that was sort of this metaphysical world. So I made a film after that called Al-Arab Al-Madfuna, using kids that are speaking in adult voices and telling a story by someone called Muhammad Mustajab. At the same time, so you see the film is showing a story, but at the same time, the kids are telling another story. And it was always like two different worlds happening at the same time, which is I tried to translate this relationship between our materialistic physical world and this metaphysical world that we don't see. We don't know what is it. This is really happening in many of my work, trying to explore this relationship. I don't know, I can give a lot of different examples, but I think we see the time is...
You have time, you can keep going.
Okay. Yeah. So I think also I'm fascinated with the idea of history, because I don't believe in history in general, and I think it's, in a way, it's not that I don't believe in history. In a way, I always deal with history as a human creation. It's a form of creativity, which is also, I love to use it like this, as a form of creativity. And my mission is to try to take this form of creativity and to translate it into a new readable format that can allow the viewer to make a new analysis. And this happened in many things. Happened, for example, when I also again started to make my series called Cabaret Crusades. And Cabaret Crusades, yes, it was about the history of the Crusades, which is very important because it shows what is happening today. It's a history that happened over 1,000 years ago, but it shows what is happening today and the relationship between East and West because of this history. That also shows that nothing actually vanished. It has always results. So when I decided to do this, it was inspired by the book by Amin Maalouf, Crusades Through Arab Eyes. I started to read this book, but again, I needed to make this type of translation, and the translation came when I started to read about the speech by Pope Urban II, and that's what made me think of this idea of manipulation. And this manipulation happened by making all the actors marionettes. And in that case, the actors are speaking in classical Arabic because I wanted this to be from the Arab point of view. Everything is speaking in classical Arabic, including the Pope, of course, everyone. And this is also very important because we go through different material, how to make the film in ceramic, in historical, sometimes in historical wooden marionettes, sometimes in Murano glass. And always there is a reason to use every material, also again to translate the purpose of using this material through the historical aspect in the film itself. Very quickly, for example, the third of the trilogy of Cabaret Crusades, I wanted to show the involvement of the Venetians in this fourth Crusades. So I was thinking a lot how to make the marionettes after I made one of the films in ceramic, and I found that the only way is to make it with the Murano glass marionettes. So to make it in Murano glass, they speaking, they blinking, and all of this, that translates certain things that it's shifting between and this European history and the Arab history that is translated through Ibn al-Athir, Ibn al-Qalansi, Usama ibn Munqidh, all these historians that wrote this history that I based on it to write the script of this film.
Thank you. I should have stopped you. Rachel,
I might have a shorter answer.
no. And also, because I want to know what you're writing.
Oh, really? Yeah,
but
yeah.
We'll stick to the plan, and I want to ask you, because, and it's a little different from what I had imagined to be this question, but because I want to go back to the idea of translator. You both mentioned that. In your case, your translation, as of many, but it's also to creating basically, making the invisible visible, the absent visible, and casting and creating and starting with a negative space is really something that is an inherent part of making this. Can you please expand that into the concept of if this can be your translation, one of your ways of describing the word translation and what that means, what it means for you to transform something that is invisible or negative into something that it's positive.
Yeah. So one piece that I made very, very early on, I think in 1998, was a piece called Shallow Breath. And that was made from a bed. My father was very ill, and he had a bed that he was sleeping on. He died, sadly, and then I used the bed to cast the sculpture from. And it looks like breath. It looks like the surface is almost as if it's been breathing. So hence the title, Shallow Breath. So that's something, okay, so that's a kind of ephemeral, it's sort of invisible, but becomes a sculptural form. Something else I've done, which I've used a lot, is books and cast from books. But the books are always cast in the negative. So you have no idea what the book is. So there's a slide that's been shown, there's a piece in the fair. And for me, I always felt that was a rather sort of extraordinary way of also looking at the world. So as the artist or as the viewer, you are the wall. So you're the wall of the thing you're looking at, which was what I first understood when I made Ghost, for example, and installed it in my studio. And I stood there really early one morning and I just thought, wow, I am the wall. That's what I've done. And, it sounds like a kind of a sort of easy concept or something, but it took me a long time to understand what it was I was actually doing. And since then, I'm really interested in materials. I'm really interested in the sort of chemistry of things, of, you know, things like concrete, how it was first developed, and then the recipe was lost, and then it's been, you know. So all of these things, rubber, glass, you know, resin, stone, bronze, you know, all of these things which I've used over the years, it has to do with a way of, one, getting colour into the work, which is something that I'm also very interested in. I originally I did my degree in painting and then then did my MA in sculpture. So it's always been something that I've been interested in, having this sort of working with these two things. Sorry, I can't remember what your question was.
What can I ask impromptu? What were you?
Well, it was just when you were speaking, I was also thinking, so what is it that I do that sort of, you know, where does this sort of, and then I was thinking, well, I think books is probably the easiest way of trying to explain, and then Shallow Breath I wrote down as well, because that was a very, very personal thing and a way of understanding how I think about work, which is generally from a very personal level, but I think how I've developed as an artist is to really try and understand and absorb the place I'm in, so being here, for example, and making it a kind of very different way of understanding what's going on.
Thank you. I have one more question, and then I have a surprise question. The next question is very, what are you guys working on? What is your next project? What is your next project? Well, Rachel, you start.
Oh, God. Sorry, oh, gosh. Well, I've been studioless for the past year, and I've had a small studio that I've been working in, where I can't make large work, but I am very fortunate now to be in the position where I have now a very big studio, and we are just finished putting it all together. And next week, I move in. So that's my project, is to get in the studio.
Thank you. Wael.
Yes, my next project I just talked about, actually, is the golf project. This is not the title. This is just a temporary title. And I was supposed to make this. It's a film about the history of the golf. It's about the history of the golf, as I just described. It was supposed to be made in India. I was supposed to film it in India. Then the final decision is to make it here, and because of course I'm running the fire station, all of this. So it was now I'm doing this here, and it should be inshallah premiered November this year. Still have to write the music, script, and everything, and I don't know anything yet, but it will happen, inshallah. Thank you.
Now, there's a word that, while I was preparing this talk, that came to mind when I was thinking, I have to say, about all the three practices. Which are very different in the appearance and in the way they formally present. But there's a word that, in many cases, for some people as a negative, or might have a negative, which is weight. What is weight for the two of you? What is weight for you, Wael?
Spelt how. Spelt how, yeah.
It's a tough one, huh?
Because it's really, okay, I think, okay, as I said, most of my work, it has a lot of layers of history, and it has this weight of history and analysis for relationship between human beings and leaders and society and different cultures and so on, and I'm really fascinated by this. But at the same time, I'm in love with beauty. It's real. I like beauty. I think I'm a bit like interested in everything classical. Like when I talk about trying to find great students, I'm still looking for talents, for example, which is something nobody uses now, but I like it a lot. I love this word. And I like beauty in my work. So I always try to engage all of this without losing the heaviness of this relationship and these layers between history and analysis of this, our relationship to the past. Yeah.
Rachel?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, actually, what you just said about students. I find it really fascinating how art schools have changed over the years. And I used to teach a lot. And I actually stopped teaching when students started to ask me, how do you become famous? And I said, stop thinking about that for a start. Get on with making your work, fill your studio up, do whatever you can to carry on making work, and just be. But you know, as a teacher, and you know this, you can tell within 5 minutes of speaking to someone if they're going to, you know, if they're going to manage it, if they're going to be, you know. So I think that's the kind of interesting. That's one, you know, that's what I would say to them. Wait, spelt W-A-I-T.
Well,
and then the heaviness of weight obviously is something that I am, you know, fascinated by. You know, I think, you know, the work that I do, people are often say to me, "You can't lift that. Don't lift that." You know, you know. As I'm getting older, I quite happily not lift things, but there were times in the studio when I was a baby artist that I would be. You know, trying to move. A lot of the work that I made very early on was sort of built on my kind of physique, you know, so what I could actually, and I was much smaller than I am now, and I would sort of have to sort of shift things, and there was one time where I got my hand stuck underneath a sculpture, and I was there for 3 hours, you know, sort of trying to, you know, so for me, you know, weight, you know, not like. But I love weight in sculpture. I think that, you know, someone like Richard Serra, for example, was a master of this, and yeah, I think it.
Thank you. And with that, I thank you both. Please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you, Wael. Thank you for inviting us to run after the unknown, to be bored, to nurture creativity. Thank you, Vincenzo. And we're going to stay with this idea of becoming and transformation in our next panel, which starts at 4:15, with Blueprints for the Future, Gulf Urbanism, Heritage and Renewal, with Her Excellency Sheikha Hala bin Mohammed Al Khalifa, who is an artist from Manama, Fatma Ibrahim Al Salawi, who is the director of Qatar Blueprint, and Glenn Lowry is the director emeritus at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. This panel will be moderated by Dr. Jelena Trujillo, so please stay on. Thank you again.